Hi, my name is Nono, and today we're going to talk about the Epic of Alexander Ultimate. My group used the Old Bin Aether strat. I would recommend starting off by going to watch one of the video guides that goes through the mechanics fully in depth. El Nino has a great guide that goes through each role and exact positioning for each of the mechanics in each phase. After you've had a chance to review one of those guides, this is a supplemental guide to talk about healing specifically and some of the nuances that we found when we were going through the prog. Although this is not an optimization guide, it can hopefully give you some helpful tips of where to focus as a healer. So without further ado, let's hop in. The fight starts out in Living Liquid, where I pull myself right up to the center. You can stand almost at the edge of the center circle without pulling aggro. The first AoE doesn't hit too hard, so I usually save his eyes for right after. I then immediately head to the second outermost circle, where I'm going to wait for the 4 dolls to explode before I head center to heal. My group had a Dark Knight to take the main tank buster to start with, so I didn't have to worry about the in-roll timing, but if you have a warrior or a different kind of tank taking that first tank buster, you will want to pay attention and potentially Benny them right after that tank buster. For the doll feeds, you're going to want to make sure you're healing in between each of those feeds. You can take 2 from full health, but you cannot take 3. For this next mechanic, I drop my puddle just far enough that I can slide cast my way in. I need to make sure that I'm within the small circles that are around the center circle to ensure that I'm going to bait that Protean. The Protean position is relative southeast to Living Liquid, roughly on the line. The next section where he's going to be doing his pulses is a great place to use either Temperance or Confession, some sort of healing buff to make sure you're able to optimize your healing. For throttles, I went top to bottom in terms of priority and my co-healer bottom to top, with ourselves as the first priority. The timing of the throttles is super quick, so when I started I would save my swift cast for that third cleanse. Although this isn't necessary, it is a helpful thing for prog. The second set of puddles and baits work the same as the first, but I would pay close attention to your tanks during this. They are taking a lot of extra damage, so make sure you have either a regen on them or make sure that they are high enough health so they can live through all of the autos that are going to be happening. Next up we have Limit Cut. 1, 2, 5, 6 are going to go north, 3, 4, 7, 8 are going to go south. For the first set of cleaves and dashes, your 1 is going to go in front and your 2 is going to go behind. We have the people that are receiving the mechanics stay on this inner circle of these 2 outer circles here, and those that aren't on the outer circle to make sure you're not getting clipped by anything. After the 8th dash, be sure to run center quickly to get off some heals before the J-kick goes off. Once you're center, be sure to be on your Nisi spot and stay there so that you don't end up accidentally swapping Nisis. As a healer, my key focus in this entire phase is on the tanks. They continuously take heavy autos, so I usually keep an individual regen on each tank as well as some Medica 2s on the entire group. My primary damage is coming from keeping my dots up, so I want to make sure I get those in between when the heals are needed. At this point, I'm looking out to see if I have the water debuff or if it is my co-healer, and then I'm dodging the chakrams and running back into my Nisi spot. The DPS are going to rotate to the supports, so I just stand still at this point. If I have the water debuff, I'm going to move to the D marker. If I do not, I'm going to move just outside of it so that I can take the puddle. Once the puddle goes off, I'm going to make sure I move out pretty quickly so that I don't get tethered to the water. I'm going to then position myself for the enums. I am always on the left as a static position. If there is a flex, I'll need to make a little bit of room for the DPS that's moving in. Here comes the next Nisi swap. You and your partner can agree on whether they're coming to you or you're coming to them before you go to your next position. In this scenario, I got the second water marker, so I'm going to go to B to drop that water, and then again move out very quickly so that I don't get hit. My co-healer and I swapped positions depending on if we had the water first. So here you'll see me to the south of the center. I would have been the opposite if I were the other one. I think some groups do this as a completely static position. The DPS are going to come to you and pass the Nisis. The thing that's happening here is, again, tons of tank damage, so lots of dots, lots of group regens, and then you're going to focus on where you're going next, whether you are a person going to get lightning to the south, or in this case, because I had the water, I cannot re-soak the water up north, so I just stay out of that so that I don't get hit. Next, I'm heading to my BPOG spot, blue, purple, orange, green, see which one you need, and pre-position there. Again, focusing on tanks to make sure that they are topped off. Once this mechanic resolves, you're going to make sure that you get over towards Cruise Chaser so that you don't get hit by the cleave, and then again, you're going to focus on your tanks. They're about to take tank busters. I usually use Benny on one of them and some lilies on the other to make sure they are healed up because they continue to take autos after that tank buster. We usually focus on BJCC first, since he's going to end up jumping over to one of our ranged, and once he jumps, then we switch over to Cruise Chaser. He's about at 10%, and auto him down until, in this case, we see him die pretty quickly, and then we head towards BJCC, finish him off, and get ready for stasis. There's no damage going out during stasis, so you're primarily focused on the mechanics. We usually call which direction BJ is and position it relative to that. If you look at one of the toolboxes, it gives you probably the best view of what those static positions are. As a healer, you're going to be north or east and west on one of those 4 positions. Once this mechanic resolves, everyone's going to head south except for the tanks, where they're going to go north for tank busters. Your tanks are usually going to invuln this, so you're going to wait for the first hit to go off, and then they will usually do their invuln then. Take 3 hits, as you see right here, 1, 2, and here comes the 3rd one, and then you will heal up right after that. Your next phase is Inception. You can see that cast going off right now. Our group keeps an eye out for Alex and calls which direction he is. So in this case, it looks like he is to your south, so we'd say tethers south and crystals north. If you have the tethers, you want to make sure you get onto one of these red dots and that your tethers are crossing. The crystal positions are also quite particular. I'll show them here. You want to be very careful to not overlap them or it will kill everybody, and make sure that they are close enough so that they all get hit by the cat when it goes through. The cat going straight down the center means you have to be lined up very particularly, and once it goes through, it will spawn the heart. Everyone pops sprint at this point and tries to go north. I'm throwing out a few AoEs to make sure everyone's topped off. Here, the tanks are going to bait the first 2 hits. First one, second one, and then the 3rd group, we're all going to pull up a little bit and bait that 3rd one. The entire group is going to go hit the heart at this point. The healers are going to the right of the direction the heart goes, and the tanks to the left as well as the stack person. So this is always going to be to the right for the healers. You wait for this to go off, and then you go very quickly to your spot. I am to the north, my co-healers to the south. We take each a hit, as well as the 1 DPS that's going to take it. The entire group on the 1 does not take any hits, and then we all move to the south. At this point, there's going to be another tank buster, so I'm going to watch out for that same timing as the previous one. Wait for the 3 hits. The only thing here is make sure the tank that's going to take the tank buster is healed up before the first hit. They do have to take the first hit without an invuln, so if they are too low, they would potentially die. The next mechanic up is Wormhole. So as soon as we see that cast going off, we're all going to head to the center to bait chakrams. I usually throw out a Medica 2 before the mechanic starts here, so that everyone has a chance to tick on that health while the mechanic is happening. We put Alex to our south, and then call odds left, evens right. Wormhole has specific positioning for each number, so I would recommend if you are new to Wormhole, at this point, pause this guide, go check out a guide specific to Wormhole. There's even a Korean simulation that you can download and practice each of the numbers individually. The other thing that we found helped a lot was to remember to use sprint if you are going from one position to the next, and if you are taking knockback second, to make sure you hit that while you're running. Afterwards, you run to center to take that AoE, and then as a healer, I'm looking at A to the north and make sure I'm soaking with the group on the right. Summoning Perfect Alex is a huge heal check, so this part you're going to want to make sure you have a good mitigation plan with your team and that you guys spread them out across all of these different hits. It's important to have some good shields on these. The first 2 hits that you have before Cruise Chaser comes out, I usually use my lilies on these. I try to have my bubble up for this. Sometimes I have it, sometimes I don't. I'm going to keep a Medica 2 up throughout this entire thing. The tick does a pretty good job for the beginning of the damage. The damage only gets heavier as it goes on, so in our group we chose to have our shield healer mitigate very heavily at the beginning, shield very heavily at the beginning, so that I wouldn't run out of mana towards the end, and as we needed the larger heals at the end, I put on Confession or Temperance depending on what I had at that time, and then did a bunch of Cure 3s to make sure we stayed up at the end. Our team usually killed around the 10th or 11th hit here on the stack. After that point, you're not going to take any more damage for a little bit, so you can focus on damaging Alex, grinding him down. A lot of groups will hold on this and make sure they don't kill him until the last minute just to regain some of your buffs, but you could also just whittle it down here as well. There will be a relatively long cutscene coming up where Perfect Alex is getting summoned. Before this goes out, your tank is going to use LB3 to make sure your group lives through it, and your shield healer is going to need to throw out some big shields to make sure that you guys can take that initial summoning damage. I also throw out a Medica 2 and put down my Asylum so that our health can tick up during the cutscene. In preparation for the next mechanic, the entire group is going to be on the C marker to the south. We are going to be looking out to see if we get either the stillness or the motion as our first mechanic. Whichever one you get first, you will get the opposite one as the second mechanic. If you are one of the beacons, the light beacon is going to have to sprint to make it to the north. They are going to stand north of the marker on the north, and the person that is the dark beacon is going to be just south of the C marker. Everybody else is going to be just north of the C marker. So everybody in the group should be touching the edge of one of the markers, not farther out. So here, we're watching out for Final Word, which is the cast that will give us our debuffs, and then for our motion or our stillness. Here goes Final Word. In this scenario, I believe I get the dark debuff, so I'm going to stand just north of that C marker. And then I'm looking out here as motion first, so stillness will be second. We immediately start jumping to make sure that that counts. And afterwards, we're going to click escape. You can do that pretty much like at this point to make sure that it doesn't count as any movement, including autos. Immediately after, you're going to have either a stack or a spread. It's going to be one after the other, so we used our Nisi spots for the spreads, and then the east and west groups based on those Nisi spots for the stacks. Because we did static groups, you may have to have a DPS flex. Alternatively, you could do this by the color of your debuff, but we found that the static groups were a little bit easier to manage and just have somebody call if a flex was needed. Next, your group is going to be on the south, and a tank is north, and you're going to be looking out for alpha. Each person is going to follow their clone to see which debuff they get, and position accordingly. This is not going to show up on your party frames, so you're going to have to look visually what you get. If you get aggravated assault, if you get defamation, or if you are the stack or no debuff. You're going to watch the two middle robots to see which of them does not shoot a laser, and along that line is going to be the safe spot. I'm going to show a graphic here of how you position in each of those spots. If you are the defamation to the north, make sure you are very close to the wall so you don't get clipped. And then during this, you're going to make sure you respect stillness or motion. You can get any combination of stillness or motion in this one. It does not have to be one and then the other like it was in the previous. For example, here we got 2 stillness. The group is going to then default back to C with your tanks at the north. Ordained Punishment is going to go out as a tank buster, and then you'll make sure you heal the tanks up right after. The mechanic that's coming after this is Freight Projection Beta. Once again, you're going to watch your clone to see which color and which debuff you get, and then you're going to pre-position based on that. I'm going to show you a graphic here of how you would pre-position. Your light beacon is going to go to the north. They are going to be on the dot that is slightly west of your north marker. Everybody else is going to be touching the east marker. The dark beacon is going to be on the far east side. All of the light debuffs are going to be headed towards the north. Dark with Christmas Tether is going to be with that group. Dark with no tether is going west. Dark with long tether is going south. There's quite a bit of time to pre-position, so your shield healer can get out some shields ahead of time, and if you have some pure heals to put on, some regens, I would throw them out ahead of time. While you're pre-positioning, you're looking out for whether there is going to be a stacker spread, whether you see those small orbs or the large orbs. Additionally, you're looking out for what the safe spot will be after that. One thing that my group had found is that if you are the person going to the west or the person going to the south, the forced march is only going to push you partway there, so after you are moving, you'll want to keep pushing to make sure you're all the way towards the wall so that you're going to get the bait that happens after. The person on the east is already pre-positioned in the right spot, and the people to the north are going to want to make sure they stay grouped up so they take the stack that's happening up there too. For this pool, I had the dark debuff as well as the long tether, so I am pre-positioning to head south. I am positioning myself relative to the beacon itself, and then I'm going to continue marching after I get there to make sure that I'm all the way south for that bait. Once that bait goes off, I'm going to run to either my stack or spread. In this case, we had a stack, so because I am a dark color, I'm going to be with the south group. If you were the dark Christmas tether, you're going to want to sprint to make sure you make it to the south, and then here we're running to the safe spot together. There's a lot of damage going on at this point, so make sure you do plenty of AoEs, and then everyone's going to regroup south for the tank busters. The tanks are going to take a few hits, so make sure you get the timing here. You're going to wait until they've taken all of the hits and then heal them up. And then the last main mechanic is coming up next. For trines, we have one person call this usually. The entire group moves together from a starting point to an end point. This is going to be north-south or east to west, never diagonal. You're going to look out for that 3-to-1. We usually have one person call this because there can be multiple solutions to this. There's a lot of damage going out here, so you're going to want to make sure to mitigate heavily, shield, and heal up right after. In between the first and the second set of trines, you're going to have a tank buster, so make sure to heal up your tank again in between this. They also continue to take autos throughout the whole thing, so watch them really carefully. This last set of trines is your last main mechanic, so you're going to want to make sure you mitigate very heavily again. Make sure you're healed up ahead of time. Once you make it through this, there is no more damage that you're going to take. After trines, the only thing left is the jail mechanic. The way most groups does this is you line up in order of DPS. You're starting from the northeast and going clockwise, from your lowest to your highest DPS member. I am going to get jailed first, so here I am trying to make sure I hit any of my damage buttons and make sure as this is coming down that I re-up my dot. Each member will get jailed one by one until you either kill Alex or hit the enrage with all 8 members jailed. And that brings us to the end of the fight. Thanks for watching, and I hope you found some of these tips or tricks helpful, and looking forward to seeing you all as perfect legends.